Good afternoon. I'm Barbara Williams, and I am here at Anna Page Park on the northwest side of Rockford, and we're going to go on a virtual wildflower walk. We've been doing this wildflower walk for a number of years, probably 10, almost 15 years. And it's always a really popular one because we get to look at some of the very early spring wildflowers that are on the floor of the forest here. We refer to them collectively as spring ephemerals. Ephemeral meaning their lifespan is very brief. They're here for a very short period of time. They come and they go. And the reason is, as you can see behind me, the leaves on the trees have not come out yet. So all the sunlight is still able to get to the forest floor. It'll be very heavily shaded later in the summer. So these are plants that take advantage of that very early sunlight. They come up, they bloom, and many of them will be died down by June or early July. So the spring wildflowers are kind of a special little show in a special time of the year. And you see the sign here, no plant collecting. They are trying to preserve some of these plants in this area, so they shouldn't be picked, they shouldn't be dug up. This is the site of an old farm, so the habitat is very varied. There's really a picnic ground, park sort of area. I'll give you a little look at this. We're going to go up the trail right there in front of us for the walk, but I'll give you a little look at the rest of the area here. We're going to come to the parking lot. There's a parking lot right here. That's my husband Dan, and he'll be coming along with us as we make this walk. Kent Creek. We'll see more of that later. Kent Creek is right over in that direction, and then back to here. So that's the trail we're going up, and let's get started. So this is just a shot of this forest. Page Park really has some beautiful forest back in this area. Big old oak trees and a nice wide path. It's a very easy walk, a little bit muddy in spots, but the big oak forest is really very nice and harbors all these nice woodland wildflowers. This is a big, robust patch of Virginia waterleaf, and it's named that because of the spots on the leaves, those pale spots that look like watermarks all over the leaves. It's a fairly common forest floor plant in this area. And a little later in the season, it will put up a stem with a cluster of pale blue flowers on it, very similar to Virginia bluebells. It's not closely related, but the flowers are sort of reminiscent and very heavily used by the early spring pollinators. So this is Virginia waterleaf. We've got a little brown snake here. This used to be called a dekayi snake, and it's now called a Midland brown snake, which is really kind of a dull name. But he's soaking up the sun here. He's sitting right out in the open, and we're not going to bother him. We're going to let him go on his way after we take a look at him here. And that's one of the kind of fun things about doing walks like this. You just never know what you're likely to come up with and find and get a really nice look at. This is a beautiful little animal, and he's about, well, I'm not sure if it's a he or she. It may be a male. It's about as big as it's going to get. I mean, this is their adult size. This animal is probably just over a foot long. So, lovely little character to run into. These are large white trillium. This is kind of an unusual trillium here. I've never really been sure if they are native to here or if they were introduced, but they are just starting to come into bloom. They have 3 leaves, 3 white petals, and they will produce a very large flower, almost the size of your palm. This is cut-leafed toothwort. See, this one right here has a pollinator right on it. There's a pollinator there. It's one of our little early forest bees. Cut-leaf toothwort has a flower very much like spring beauty, but look at the leaf. The leaf is deeply cut, and hence the name cut-leafed toothwort. It's forms sometimes here. Our pollinators moved over to here. It forms sometimes large mats on the forest floor, and this plant is, of course, coming into full bloom right now. There's still a lot of buds, but a lot of flowers that are out. The flowers will fade, and the leaves will actually start to die by the beginning of June. By the middle of June, you will not be able to find this plant at all on the forest floor. It will already have died down. So a very short season, and here it is now, drinking in all the sun it can get. This is a smooth yellow violet, I believe. Violets are a little difficult. It's a delicate little thing right there. Violets are kind of an ID challenge. They are somewhat difficult to identify. There's several different colors, a lot of different leaf shapes and configurations. And then just to make it more complicated, they hybridize with each other. But I believe this is smooth yellow violet. This is trout lily. These are some really nice trout lilies that are in full bloom. You can see when they really open up, their petals curve back into an upright position while the whole flower is aimed down toward the ground. These again are very early blooming spring ephemeral. These are the leaves. The leaves are these very straight, simple leaves. They have varying amounts of dark mottling on them. And trout lilies often form large patches that are mostly leaves. It takes quite a while for them to come into bloom. I've heard that it takes more than 7 years. I've heard more than 9 years. I've heard as much as 20 years for them to come into bloom. But most years they'll just put up a single leaf and then this one bloom. This bloom closes at night. So if you're out here in the evening, you'll only find closed up buds. You have to be out in the middle of the day, really, to see them in full bloom. Tucked in around them, this is a spring beauty. And here, spring beauties here, spring beauty, spring beauty. Spring beauties, again, a very delicate little forest floor plant, a very simple leaf. That's the leaf right there. It's just a very thin little strap leaf. Without the flowers, you probably wouldn't even notice the plant was there. Spring beauty is a very conservative wildflower. It takes them a long time to spread. And again, they close up at night. So if you come through in the early morning or late at night, late in the afternoon, you won't see them blooming. This is a stand of bluebells, Virginia bluebells, that is just coming into bloom. You can see there's some daffodils in the background too. Those are left over from the days when this was a farm and they've gone wild here. But the bluebells cover a large area along the south side of the trail. This little thing here is Rue Anemone. Again, it has a flower that's very similar to a spring beauty, but the flower comes right out of the center of that rosette of kind of open pear-shaped leaves. Here down the corner we have bedstraw. Bedstraw is a kind of a vining plant that sprawls all over the place. There's several types of bedstraw in the area, and it's got a whole bunch of little kind of sticky hooks on the stems, so you can stick it to fabric, and it will. So you can stick it to your cloth, and it will stay there. It's kind of an interesting little plant. Over here on this side, again, this just plain green strap-like leaf. That is wild leek, and after the leaves die down later in the summer, it will put up a flower stalk with an onion-like head of flowers and then seeds on the top of it. Again, if you crush the leaf in your fingers, you get a very strong oniony smell. It's very popular for people to collect and use in cooking, but that's resulted in it being wiped out of a lot of areas because it's over-collected by and large. So, wild leek, Rue Anemone, and bedstraw. Another of our woodland wildflowers that's kind of a specialty for certain areas is Dutchman's breeches. They supposedly look like the little pantaloons that Dutchmen used to wear, or maybe they still do. Grow in little clumps with this very fine feathery foliage and put up this white spike of flowers that, again, the flowers come out early, die down fairly quickly. Dutchman's breeches. This is one of the Rue family. We just looked at Rue Anemone. This is False Rue. All this patch here is False Rue, and it's going to bloom a little bit later than the Rue Anemone. The False Rue is going to have a single flower that will come right up from the center of a little triad of deeply cut leaves. False Rue often forms these large mats of fairly densely spaced plants, whereas the Rue Anemone is a little more thinly distributed. It's individual plants scattered through the area. In the middle of this False Rue, we have this little guy coming up, and this is a mayapple. Some people call them umbrella plants. That's the way they first come out of the ground. They're all tightly rolled up, and they come up just like a big fat crayon coming up out of the ground. And let's go look at some that are up a little farther. So here's a couple mayaples that are looking pretty good. The one on the left has got its leaves kind of half lifted into position. The ones on the right are a little smaller. The one on the far right is actually putting up 2 leaves. These mayaples are named for a fruit that forms later in the season. Underneath the umbrella leaf, they will form a white flower that's kind of globe-shaped and maybe 3/4 of an inch to an inch across. That will eventually form a fruit that is a pale yellowish green that will hang under the leaves for most of the rest of the summer. So, mayapple. This is a stretch of Kent Creek that runs through the park and right alongside the trail. It's a lovely creek that runs through the west side of Rockford and comes out of the western part of the county. There are shrubs you can see encroaching on the sides of the stream here, and they are the invasive shrub honeysuckle, bush honeysuckle, that has taken over so much of the woodland in this area. You can see those shrubs are putting out leaves already. They leaf out very early, so they shade out some of these wildflowers, which is why a lot of places try to control them. This creek has a number of different small fish in it. It has mink, it has beaver. We just flushed a pair of wood ducks off it when we walked up to this spot. So it's kind of an interesting little creek. And here are the skunk cabbages. Skunk cabbages have a big kind of healthy patch over several hundred square yards here, right on the edge of the creek. They like very low, swampy ground. These are one of the first green plants to come up in the spring, and they flower very early also. And I'm going to take you right in and show you a flower. There's a good flower right there. That little purple elf that's sticking up right here, that is the flower. And the flower actually smells kind of bad. It smells like something slightly spoiled because it is pollinated by flies, because there are no bees or butterflies out this early in the year. Well, they're starting to come out now, but when this needs to be pollinated, flies are the only thing around, so they have to attract the flies. So here we are. Again, we're right on the shore of the creek. The creek is right there, and there's this big patch of skunk cabbage, and they will get more than knee-high as the summer goes along. They'll get to be almost hip-high. Oh, there's Dan again. This is one of our other sort of specialty plants of these real low, permanently wet areas. This is marsh marigold. It's not a marigold at all. It's more closely related to the buttercups. and it wants its feet wet all the time. Blooms very early, and as you can see, it's very showy when it blooms. Marsh marigold. This is one of the last plants we're going to look at. This is Hepatica. Hepatica is a delicate little thing, comes out very early in the spring. It has this beautiful little white flower raised up above these fuzzy little leaves. When the leaves first come out, they're all covered with fuzz. Then, as they unfold, they take on this liver-colored, which is why it's called Hepatica. It's a three-lobed leaf that's strongly marked with a liver color. This plant is actually growing on a north-facing slope. It comes up and comes out very early, and actually some of the Hepatica here are already finished blooming. If you listen to the background of this video, you might be lucky to hear a pileated woodpecker drumming. There's one just up over the hill in the big oak forest. Thank you for coming with me on this video walk. This is a Rockford Park District property that's laced with trails. I hope you get out here to see these plants in person. This is Anna Page Park. Thank you.